COP27, COP27, but actually there's a lot of work that goes on all through the year and negotiations leading up to it. We tend to hear about the final communique, which is often a deep disappointment. And once again, that was a deep disappointment in many ways this year. And there was no mention of oil and gas, which, given the huge impact of oil and gas on climate change, and what we've been told that actually technologically we can stop tipping over beyond 1.5 degrees of warming, which is bad enough in itself. We see where we are before we've reached that, but people are saying politically they cannot see a way through at the moment. So we're so dependent on what goes on both in these meetings and behind the scenes. So the next year is going to be led by Egypt because they were the hosts for this COP27. I think the next one is in Abu Dhabi. That sounds ready to be corrected. And then China will take over the presidency, that people are saying will be interesting because although it hasn't been a leader and in fact is one of the top places that are putting fuels into the air, they do also have a huge amount of global influence, and I believe they are helping some of the small islands that are about to disappear into the sea to raise the level of their islands so that it's still habitable even in storm surges. So who knows where that may go, but we don't have very long. As Francis was saying, one of the positive things this year, to focus on that, was that at long last there is a fund been agreed to be established called a loss and damage fund. And sort of tactically, people didn't call it reparations because that would lead to some countries then falling out and not wanting to accept it and give people an excuse. So loss and damage is the phrase that they've gone with. There's an awful lot of detail behind that that's not been agreed as yet. So I can't give you chapter and verse on it. That's still going on. And it's a fund that as yet people haven't contributed money into. So it's a fund that's empty at the moment and needs the contributions made to it. What is a guide to this is something called the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda, which has got 30 adaptation outcomes listed in that, again, which all have to be worked up. But it starts with a recognition that actually half the world's population will be at severe risk of climate change impact by 2030. We're about to enter 2023. And we've already heard very movingly about the huge impact of what we're already seeing at 1.1 degrees of warming in those enormous floods in Pakistan, and how people are trying to survive just as biological beings in temperatures of 50 degrees in which people's bodies might just shut down. And there were some cities where people were going and standing in the rivers, as reported, to just be able to survive those temperatures, which at the moment were only for a matter of some days. But you can imagine what it would be like if it was going on further than that. So this is incredibly urgent. So coming back to the 30 outcomes, it includes things like having smart early warning systems in the countries and areas most at risk, so that people will have a warning to be able to, whatever it is, go to higher ground, or that heat is going to rise to this amount. So if people have preparations and warning, then hopefully it will mean people can survive, or far higher numbers of people can survive and stay well and take their families and their essential possessions with them. To reduce farmhouse gases, there's investment in mangroves that are an important part of capturing carbon in many parts of the world. There's due to be a fund for clean cooking for £2.4 billion because burning wood is also a major factor in many countries. And various other things, but I say it's all early days headlines at the moment. One thing I'd say is that the alliance of, let me get the terms right, the, where is it? Got it written down. The alliance of small island states, who are the small countries who are most at risk of disappearing as sea levels rise. And it does include some in the Caribbean, Cuba, the Bahamas, Belize, Dominican Republic. They've been very active and have a very powerful case to receive help. You know, they're actually going to disappear. Some are buying land in other countries to move their population to. But there's been a very strong push led by Mia Mottley of Barbados. Yeah, she's been calling for the reform of the development banks so that all their programs and investment are aligned with the Paris Accords and 1.5, and also nature positivity, which is about the biodiversity COP, which is due to happen in Montreal actually in next month. So there's much stronger language around the need for reform there and transforming global finances and investment than there's ever been before. So I think we don't hear it necessarily about that in our media, but there's a strong voice coming through, which, you know, and more powerful may it be. There's also 17 states that have put out a 10-point plan for nature, because we can't just tackle what goes into the atmosphere without tackling the destruction of nature and the loss of so many species and the exploitation of so many natural resources. So not all the outcomes of COP27 were positive. The final declaration did keep the commitment to 1.5 degrees, not going beyond that. You will have heard keep 1.5 alive, but very little in the action needed, which has to be a dramatic turnaround of the way we live at the moment, and say, you know, that needs the political drive, which is seems so impossible to achieve, and it comes back to us willing to raise and shout and do what's needed to get that onto the agenda. But some really important aspects about global justice, about the position of communities who have not caused this emergency that we're in, but are the earliest to be suffering from it before it spreads more widely. Those have been put on the agenda. I think that the real demand is to get the action aligned to that as the year progresses and their negotiations leading up to COP28, and to get money into that fund for loss and damage so that people can start calling on it as soon as possible. And that's where we can push our government to be at the forefront in that.